Just a quick sound check. Can everybody hear me okay?
¿Todos me pueden escuchar bien?
Yes, we can hear you well. Do you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's just check my translator.
Estoy chequeando a mi traductor.
Once again. Yes.
Una más.
Welcome everybody to
Bienvenidos todos
this weekend camp meeting.
a este camp meeting de fin de semana.
I want to begin by attempting to answer a few questions that I've received.
Quiero comenzar respondiendo algunas preguntas que me llegaron.
So I don't normally do this to put people on the spot,
Normalmente no hago esto de poner a la gente, mandar a alguien al frente.
but someone asked me a question about Catherine's presentation yesterday.
Pero alguien me hizo una pregunta sobre la presentación de Catherine de ayer.
I'm just going to ask her now. She didn't know.
Entonces ahora le voy a preguntar a ella. Ella no sabe.
You probably won't be able to hear her, so I'm just going to repeat what she says, if she says anything.
Y como no la van a poder escuchar, yo les voy a repetir lo que ella diga.
So I've been in what I might describe as a long-term conversation
Yo he estado en una conversación desde hace mucho
with a friend in the movement,
con una amiga del movimiento, amiga,
and it's about Panium.
y la conversación era sobre Panio.
So I know lots of people are talking about Panium,
Hay muchas personas hablando de Panio,
and Catherine mentioned it yesterday in her presentation.
y ayer en su presentación Catherine lo mencionó.
So for quite some time now, we have understood Panium to be 2021.
Así que ya por bastante tiempo hemos entendido que Panio era 2021.
I just want to remind everybody that the discussion or the subject of Panium is not new, it's an old subject.
Quiero recordarles a todos que la discusión sobre el asunto de Panio es un tema ya viejo, no es algo nuevo.
It's been on our radar for 6 years.
Ha estado en nuestro radar ya por más o menos 6 años.
And Elder Tess was not the first person to bring that, we'll call it a battle, bring that battle to our understanding.
Y no fue la anciana Tess la primera que trajo esa batalla a nuestro entendimiento.
Just a general comment.
Solo un comentario general.
I think many of us have either forgotten or have got into a habit of not reviewing old material.
Creo que muchos de nosotros hemos caído en el hábito de no revisar, de no repasar materiales viejos.
In addition to that,
Y además de eso,
a lot of the older material, when people left the movement, they took their material with them.
muchas personas que dejaron el movimiento se llevaron sus materiales con ellos.
So this is just an admonition or an encouragement that we should be reviewing older material.
Entonces sí, estoy intentando animarlos a que repasemos materiales viejos.
So Panium, I suspect the majority of us
Yo sospecho que la mayoría de nosotros
understand it to be an information war.
entendemos que Panio se trata de una guerra de información.
And I think most of us have got some level of understanding that it's connected with the war in Ukraine.
Y nosotros tenemos, aunque sea algún nivel de entendimiento, de que está conectado con la guerra de Ucrania.
And it's not a straightforward subject. Plus, we haven't been very precise in our language in the past.
no es un tema tan claro y además no hemos sido tan precisos con nuestro lenguaje en el pasado.
But the concept of information war,
Pero el concepto de guerra de información,
Cold Wars,
guerras frías
and hot wars
y guerras calientes
are terms that we use, but I think aren't well understood.
son términos que usamos, pero me parece que no están del todo bien entendidos.
So I'm going to simplify the question.
Entonces voy a simplificar la pregunta.
Are we still in Panium?
¿Todavía estamos en paño?
Is the information war that began in 2021,
¿Es la guerra de información que comenzó en 2021?
are we still in that information war?
¿Estamos todavía en esa guerra de información?
And is the war in Ukraine Panium
¿Es la guerra en Ucrania paño
or something else?
o algo más? ¿O es algo más o es otra cosa?
Catherine, do you have any thoughts on that? Because you did mention some of those aspects.
Catherine, ¿tenés algún pensamiento en relación a eso?
In my mind, Panium is in 2021.
That's it.
exclusive.
Go ahead.
Okay, in my mind, 2021, Panium is behind us, that waymark.
Okay, so Catherine believes that the waymark of Panium has come to its end. And
Catherine cree
go
que
ahead.
el hito de paño ya ha terminado.
And when did it end? It ended in 2021? Or spilled over into 22?
It might have spilled into 2022, early 2022.
So the question is, when did Panium end?
Entonces la pregunta es, ¿cuándo terminó paño?
And she has said it spilled into early 2022.
Y ella acaba de decir que se extiende hasta comienzos de 2022.
Is that before February, the invasion?
Picture it.
Antes de febrero. Que fue
She
la invasión.
believes it ended before the invasion began.
Entonces Catherine cree que terminó paño antes de que comience la invasión.
You want to add anything else?
We knew that there would be a progressive fall for Russia over the dispensation between 2021 and Sunday law. So the continuation of the war in Ukraine, I see as that intermediate period.
So she recognizes that the king of the south would fall
Ella reconoce que el rey del sur va a caer
from 2021 Panium to the Sunday law.
entre 2021 paño y la ley dominical.
But the history that we're now in
Pero la historia en la que estamos ahora
is not Panium.
no es paño.
What would you say that it is?
¿Y qué dirías que es esta historia?
I set a dot of the line about 2/3 of the way along, but I'm not sure why I do that.
I'm going to reframe my question.
Voy a replantear mi pregunta.
Does it have a historical precedence or history that we could identify it with a name or something? What history are we in if we're past Panium?
¿Hay algún precedente histórico que podamos identificar? ¿Hay algún precedente histórico que podamos identificar como para saber dónde estamos ahora?
Past history. Like Panium is a historical event. Is there a history that we're going to go to find out where we are now?
¿Hay alguna historia a la que podamos ir para identificar dónde estamos ahora?
So Catherine said that she doesn't know a historical story to
Catherine dice
explain
que
where
ella
we are now.
no sabe de una historia de un punto en la historia, un evento en la
But in
historia
our
que
own
pueda explicar
history,
dónde estamos ahora, pero nuestra propia historia
it's a repeat of,
es una repetición
1989 to 1990.
it's repeat of 1989 to 1991.
es una repetición de 1989 hasta 1991.
89 to 91. And Catherine, what is that?
¿Y qué es eso, Catherine?
So she's lining up the fall of the USSR from
Entonces,
89 to
ella
91
está
with our
alineando
current history.
la caída de la Unión Soviética de 1989 a 1991 con nuestra historia actual.
Is that correct? And Catherine's lining that up with
Catherine está alineando esto con
1989
el 89
to
al 91.
1991. Is that correct? And she says this is Paleo.
Y ella dice que esto es paño,
It's the year, but it's the point.
es el año, pero es un punto.
And this history here
Y esta
is the
historia acá
progressive fall of the King of the South.
es la caída progresiva del Rey del Sur.
Okay, so I hope that answers that person's question.
Espero que esto responda a la pregunta de quien había preguntado.
Okay, so I'm just reading what the questioner had said after that.
Solo estaba leyendo lo que quien preguntó dijo después de eso.
Okay, so I hope that answers your question, and they might come back.
Espero que esto responda a tu pregunta y bueno, tal vez podemos volver a eso.
Okay, so I had another question.
Entonces, tengo otra pregunta.
This is on Acts 27,
Esto es sobre Hechos 27,
the island of Melita.
la isla de Malta.
What island is Melita? Malta. So everyone here knew it was Malta.
Todos acá conocemos de la isla como Malta.
So Paul is on the island of Malta,
Entonces, Pablo está en la isla de Malta.
and I don't know if the question is connected to the presentation that was done yesterday,
No sé si la pregunta está conectada con la presentación que fue hecha ayer,
or to some of the thoughts and ideas that I've introduced in the recent past.
o con alguno de los temas que yo fui introduciendo en el pasado reciente.
So we all know that Paul becomes famous in Malta.
Entonces, todos sabemos que en Malta Pablo se volvió famoso.
So I'm not going to go to the verses because I think we're very familiar with that story.
No voy a ir a los versículos porque creo que estamos bastante familiarizados con esa historia.
Certain things happen in that story.
Algunas cosas sucedieron en esa historia.
There's the snake,
Está lo de la serpiente
and then there's the Roman governor's father.
y después está lo del padre del gobernador romano.
I think his name is Publius. It's Publius' father who gets healed.
Creo que el nombre es Publius, que es quien es sanado.
And those two events propel Paul to fame.
Y son esos los dos eventos que impulsan a Pablo hacia la fama.
And we have taught that the arrival on the island is what waymark
¿Y
for us?
qué hito es para nosotros la llegada a esta isla? ¿Qué hemos dicho?
I can't hear. Who's speaking? I didn't hear what they said. Sunday law. So we've taught that that's Sunday law.
Entonces, hemos dicho que es ley dominical.
And the questioner understands that.
Y quien hizo la pregunta entiende esto.
So you can guess what the question is
Entonces, pueden adivinar cuál es la pregunta. Pueden
based
suponer cuál es la
upon
pregunta,
Catherine studies and comments that I've made in the past.
basado en el estudio de Catherine y los comentarios que yo hice en el pasado.
And those on Zoom, what you're not aware of is the discussions that we had after her studies here at camp.
Y los que están en Zoom saben la discusión que hemos tenido acá, después del estudio de Catherine. No saben.
It didn't answer that question, but there was some discussion around that subject.
No se respondió esa pregunta, pero aquí hubo una discusión en relación a ese tema.
So the questioner is asking the following.
Entonces, quien pregunta quiere saber lo siguiente.
Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me now? Sorry. So the questioner understands that and he's asking the following.
Entonces, esta persona está preguntando lo siguiente.
I'm going to quote him.
Lo voy a citar.
Knowing that at the Sunday law, going forward,
Sabiendo que en la ley dominical, en adelante,
we're supposed to interact with the Nethinims
se supone que interactuemos con los netineos,
and he's basing that on Acts 27
y está basando
or into
eso
28.
en Hechos 28.
What does that look like in our time?
¿Cómo se ve eso en nuestro tiempo?
So what does it look like, the interaction that we have with the Nethinims?
Entonces, ¿cómo se ve la interacción que nosotros tenemos con los netineos?
So if we compare Acts 27, we are whom in that
Entonces,
story?
si nosotros comparamos con Hechos 27, ¿quién somos nosotros en esa historia?
So everybody here said Paul,
Entonces, todos acá dijeron Pablo,
and the Nethinims are whom?
y los netineos son ¿quiénes?
The islanders, the people from Malta who live there.
Las personas que viven en Malta, los nativos de Malta.
Okay, so I'm going to ask maybe two people here.
Entonces, le voy a preguntar a dos personas acá,
What they make of that story,
qué es lo que ellos sacan de esa historia,
what they understood or what they think they understood that Catherine was teaching yesterday,
qué entendieron o qué piensan que entendieron de lo que Catherine estaba enseñando ayer,
and what they think they've heard me say
y
in the
qué es lo
past.
que ellos piensan que me han escuchado decir a mí en el pasado.
So there are three stories, if you like.
Hay tres historias, si se quiere.
Acts, Catherine, me.
Hechos, Catherine y yo.
I'm only using Catherine because it's topical when we're at this camp meeting. I'm not trying to pick on her study or do anything negative.
Estoy usando a Catherine por el tema que ella abordó en este camp meeting, no por ninguna otra cosa.
And we all have our own ideas anyway, I think.
Y además ya cada uno de nosotros seguro ya tiene su propia idea.
Okay, so one volunteer to put their hand up.
Entonces, ¿algún voluntario que levante la
Okay, so
mano?
Curtis is going to go first. So the question is,
Entonces la pregunta es,
we've got Acts 27
tenemos Hechos 27,
where Paul is literally famous
donde Pablo es literalmente famoso,
because of his good works.
debido a sus buenas obras.
What does that mean for us today,
¿Qué
Curtis?
significa eso para nosotros, Curtis?
If we take the three separate stories,
Go ahead.
if we take the three separate stories that we give us,
So if we take those three stories,
Entonces, si tomamos esas tres historias, dice él,
all going to fame in Acts 27,
when Paul becomes famous in Acts 27,
cuando Pablo se vuelve famoso en Hechos 27,
he's giving something to the Maltesians that they don't have.
he's going to give something to the people of Malta that they don't have.
él le va a dar algo a la gente de Malta que ellos no tienen.
In the study Catherine did yesterday,
In the study
estudio
that was
que-
done yesterday by Catherine,
En el estudio que hizo ayer Catherine,
there's an element that this movement gives the Nethinims that they don't have, if that's the conclusion that we draw from that.
so Curtis has drawn the conclusion that there is something that we will give the Nethinims.
entonces Curtis ha llegado a la conclusión de que hay algo que nosotros le vamos a dar a los netineos.
In those two literal histories, because Catherine used the 1850s history and Acts 27, that's literally going to them and giving them those truths.
So in yesterday's study, we know that Catherine spoke of the 1850 history,
Entonces, en el estudio de ayer sabemos que Catherine habló de la historia de 1850
and if we layer that on to Acts 27,
y si alineamos eso con Hechos 27,
in both stories, God's people literally go or are required to go to the world.
en ambas historias el pueblo de Dios es requerido de ir al mundo.
And the marker that she used for that was the 1850 chart.
Y lo que ella usó para esta historia es la pancarta de 1850.
The third component, which is what you've taught,
So the third part that I've intimated
Entonces, el tercer componente, que es el que incluyó Parminder,
is that our relationship with the Levites and the Nethinims is not physical and literal.
So I've suggested that our relationship with the Nethinims is not literal. That's what
entonces
Curtis has said.
Curtis dice que lo que yo sugerí es que nuestra relación con los levitas y netineos no es literal.
So while we have two literal missionary works being done, and what I understand your past teachings is that the relationship with the Nethinims is a spiritual relationship. So whatever that looks like doesn't look like these literal works that are being done.
So Curtis understands
Entonces Curtis entiende
that in the book of Acts
que en
and
el
in
libro de Hechos
1850,
y que en 1850
there was literal evangelism going on.
había un evangelismo literal sucediendo.
And he says that today,
Y él dice que hoy,
in the future, in the Sunday law, of course,
estamos en el futuro y en la ley dominical,
there's not going to be literal evangelism, there's going to be spiritual evangelism.
no va a haber un evangelismo literal, sino que va a haber un evangelismo espiritual.
So it's a spiritual manifestation of those histories.
Entonces sería una manifestación espiritual de esas dos
And
historias.
what does that mean?
We're not specifically having physical contact with them, giving them a message.
We're not going to have contact with them,
No vamos a tener un contacto con ellos físico,
Or whatever message they are getting from God is coming externally. Is not coming from us.
so they will be evangelized,
Entonces ellos van a ser evangelizados,
not by us,
no por nosotros,
but by a message that originates from God.
pero por un mensaje que se origina en Dios.
Okay, so in summary,
Entonces, en resumen,
one of our members here believes the following:
uno de nuestros miembros aquí cree lo siguiente,
that despite the 1850 history and the Book of Acts history,
que a pesar de las historias de 1850 y las de Hechos 27,
we won't be doing evangelism to the Nethinims,
nosotros no vamos a hacer un evangelismo a los netineos,
but they will be receiving a message
pero ellos van a recibir un mensaje
from God
de Dios
without defining what that means.
sin definir qué es eso.
It's the test,
Es la prueba,
but it's not going to come from us.
pero no va a provenir de nosotros.
And so the inference or the suggestion is
Entonces la inferencia, la sugerencia es
that it will come from an external source, which would
que va a venir de
essentially
una
be the
fuente
world.
externa.
Is that fair representation? He agrees with that.
Curtis está de acuerdo.
Anyone else wants to say something?
¿Alguien más quiere decir algo?
Brian?
That, other than what Curtis is saying, if that's not what's going to happen, God's going to have to empower us to do some great thing that's going to attract attention to the messages.
So Brian has said
Entonces Brian dice
that if Curtis is wrong,
que si Curtis no si él está
then the
equivocado
book of Acts will have to be literally fulfilled.
y el libro de Hechos debería cumplirse literalmente,
In some fashion, we have to become famous,
entonces de alguna manera nosotros deberíamos volvernos famosos
and so we become the center of attention.
y volvernos el centro de atención.
And obviously, that's based on an Acts 27 model.
Y por supuesto eso está basado en el modelo de Hechos 27.
And even though Brian didn't say that,
Y aunque Brian no lo haya dicho,
so I say the following, not the
o
past.
sea que no haya dicho lo siguiente,
This is exactly the same model that Ellen White provides.
este es exactamente el mismo modelo que provee Ellen White.
She suggests that we will be projected into the national discussion.
Ella sugiere que nosotros vamos a ser proyectados a la
And you can go
discusión
to the
nacional
1890s to get evidence for that.
y podemos ir a la historia de la década de 1890 para tener evidencia de eso.
Right? Anything else? So I just want to ask Brian, which one do you favor? Your voice? So he believes that
Entonces Brian cree
some event is going to happen
que algún evento va a ocurrir
that will make us famous,
que nos va a hacer famosos
and the public will know who we are,
y el público, la gente va a saber quiénes somos
and we'll have a platform to share our message with the world.
y que vamos a poder tener una plataforma para compartir nuestro mensaje con el mundo.
So if I can frame it this way,
Si yo pudiera enmarcarlo de la siguiente manera,
without defining what those circumstances are,
sin definir cuáles son esas circunstancias,
one of our members says that the movement's standard or traditional teaching on the Sunday law is correct.
uno de nuestros miembros dice que la enseñanza tradicional del movimiento es correcta.
Is that fair representation?
Yeah.
So in our little group here,
Entonces, en nuestro pequeño grupo acá,
we have differing views on what the future looks like.
tenemos dos visiones diferentes en cuanto a cómo se ve el futuro.
Brian, did you have that understanding before yesterday?
Brian, ¿tenías ese entendimiento antes de ayer?
I've always expressed that we have to be able to be outstanding in the world to get this message across. Otherwise, it's not, then it's going to have to be the way Curtis has projected it.
So I hope everybody on Zoom understands that I'm rephrasing people's responses.
Espero que las personas en Zoom entiendan cuando repito
So
la
Brian has said
respuesta de
he's
las
never
personas.
let go of the old ways.
Entonces Brian dice que nunca dejó los caminos antiguos
And embraced these new ideas.
y que dejó los nuevos caminos y abrazó estas nuevas ideas.
Anyone else? No thoughts? Shy?
Is there a third way, middle way,
Start again, sorry.
is there a third or middle way where a representation of the character is represented by a group of people?
Sorry, could you repeat that? Someone did something to my Zoom.
Is there a third way? So in between where a group of people are used as a representation of the people who will be saved. And they do some evangelism, but most of it is spiritual, but that is the physical evangelism will be done by a small group, but it's a representation of what broadly happens.
Before I get that translated,
Antes de que traduzcamos eso,
that small group, you're talking about us. So the question is,
entonces la pregunta es,
or suggestion,
o la sugerencia,
Curtis says that none of us do a work for the Nephilims.
entonces Curtis dice que ninguno de nosotros hace una obra para los netineos.
Brian says that all of us as a movement do a work for the Nephilims.
Brian dice que todos nosotros como movimiento hacemos una obra para los netineos.
And Courtney has suggested,
Y Courtney aquí sugirió
that maybe only a few of us do this work.
que tal vez solo algunos de nosotros hacen esta obra.
So I just want to ask you, Courtney, just a short response. Those few people who do that work,
Esas pocas personas que hacen esa obra,
are they sent or are they independent workers?
¿son trabajadores independientes o son enviados?
Independent work.
He said that they're independent workers.
Él dice que son trabajadores independientes.
Okay, so I want to comment now on that.
Entonces yo ahora quiero comentar yo al respecto.
And I have suggested,
He enseñado y sugerido,
mostly in private, not so much in public, say,
más que nada
perhaps,
en privado, no tanto en público, tal vez,
that if you go and do an independent work,
que si incursionás en una obra independiente,
you're not representing a movement.
no estás representando al movimiento.
So I don't think that would qualify.
Entonces no creo que eso calificaría.
What we have to be careful about
Y con lo que tenemos que tener cuidado
is reading Paul's history,
es leer la historia de Pablo,
because in many ways he's an independent atom,
porque en muchas maneras él es un átomo independiente,
but we treat him as a representative of the movement back then.
pero lo tratamos como si fuera un representante del movimiento de aquel entonces.
Okay, Catherine, do you have any thoughts?
Entonces, Catherine, ¿tenés algún pensamiento?
Thoughts about what it looks like going to the Netherlands?
So the question is, we've got
La pregunta es,
stories, literal stories, that
tenemos
give this
historias
idea that
literales
we go to the world.
que dan esta idea de que nosotros vamos al mundo.
And we've built a whole theology,
Y hemos construido una teología,
a doctrine,
una doctrina
that we are at the center of the great controversy
de que nosotros estamos en el
during the Sunday
centro
law history.
de la gran controversia durante la historia de la ley dominical.
And it's built upon these stories and similar ones.
Y está construido a partir de estas historias y otras similares.
Curtis said that that version is no longer fit for purpose.
Curtis dijo que esa obra, que esa teología
Brian said it's
ya no nos
still
sirve.
correct, it's still sound.
Brian dijo que todavía es correcta y sirve.
And that's my question, Catherine.
Y esa es mi pregunta, Catherine.
My expectation has been that we will do work on behalf of the movement, but in our personal spheres of influence.
So Catherine's response
La respuesta de Catherine
was similar to Courtney's,
es similar a la de Courtney,
that each of us will just do the work that lies nearest,
de que cada uno de nosotros va a realizar la obra que esté más a la mano,
a personal independent work.
una obra personal e independiente.
Is that fair representation?
By independent, are you saying it's not part of the movement?
So I'm going to define what independent means.
Entonces yo voy a definir qué es lo que significa independiente.
Whoever we want to define leadership as,
Quien sea que definas como líder o liderazgo,
whether it's me, a continental leader or a ministry leader,
sea yo o un líder continental o un líder ministerial,
they have not explicitly sent you out to do something or speak to people.
ellos no te van a enviar específicamente a hacer algo o hablar con las personas.
There's no coordination,
No hay una coordinación
there's no organization.
y no hay una organización.
It's just an individual member of the movement deciding that they need to speak at some moment to somebody.
Es simplemente un miembro del movimiento que decide en cierto momento que va a hablarle a cierta persona.
That's what I mean by independent.
That's the view that I had. That's the view that I had, although it doesn't sound very good now that you've said what you said.
I want to add that I don't mean to put a negative connotation to that.
Quiero agregar que no le estoy poniendo una connotación negativa a esto.
Because she and others are nervous that they're acting rebelliously.
Porque ella y otros tienen miedo de estar actuando de manera, de estar actuando en rebelión.
And when I've discussed this subject in the past, this particular issue,
Y hemos discutido en el pasado este asunto particular.
I think some people have had their zeal chilled, if I can say it that way,
Y en ese momento creo que algunas personas se sintieron con su
because there's a
celo,
misunderstanding of what this issue would mean.
con un celo por justamente
So
el
I'm not
entendimiento de qué
suggesting
significa.
that an independent work is wrong or bad or rebellious.
Entonces no estoy sugiriendo que una obra independiente está mal o es rebelión,
But I am suggesting it doesn't fit the criteria of a movement-led initiative.
solo digo que no cumple con los criterios de una iniciativa liderada por el movimiento.
So Did you want to respond?
You didn't, that's the view that I held up until now, and yeah, I don't know, the way I was seeing it was how you described it, so then.
Okay, so no more comment. She's
Entonces,
happy.
no hay más
Ish.
comentarios, ella está contenta.
So, oh,
I think I agree with the previous speakers' thoughts. I feel that obviously I've got a lot less knowledge on the movement in general. I feel some of the problems may come with accountability, in that owning the act of being independent gives us accountability. So which is why we probably shy away from the idea of being independent. But I do agree that for example, I feel I am one of the testimonies of the spoken word of the movement. So whilst we may not be acting, we may not think that we're acting on a majority, we are talking and influencing our circles. We are talking and spreading, kind of like what Dad is saying, that we are still spreading a word out there, even if it's not on a grand scale.
okay, so that was more of a testimony than a question, I think.
Esto fue más un testimonio que una pregunta, creo.
And it's reiterating the point that there is no negativity, certainly not in my mind, when people go ahead and
Y refuerza el punto de que no hay
are
negatividad
moved by the Holy Spirit
en relación a
to
cuando las
speak to
personas
people.
movidas por el Espíritu Santo van y hablan a otras personas.
That's a representation. Yeah, what I do want to disagree with what you said
Lo que yo quisiera no estar de acuerdo con lo que dijiste,
is that's not what Brian said, I don't think.
que no creo que es lo que haya dicho Brian.
He spoke. Sorry.
Sorry, that was what Courtney said, being in the middle.
Oh, Courtney, I thought you said.
No, I did.
Okay. Okay, so I won't comment anymore then. That's fine. Any other thoughts?
¿Algún otro pensamiento?
Can I just clarify that that's what everyone's been doing all along? So that's no different when we get to Sunday Law and Our Cry than what we've been doing all along, if you go with that.
Yes, I'll try to repeat everybody's thing. So we're talking about the Sunday law and what it looks like.
Estamos hablando de la ley dominical y de cómo se ve.
And I'm going to stick to that term, doing an independent work.
Y me quiero hacer énfasis en ese término de hacer una obra independiente.
I'll add another way of expressing it, a personal work, because that may be
Y otra
less
forma de expresarlo
offensive.
sería una obra personal, un trabajo personal, que es una forma menos ofensiva.
I wasn't trying to be offensive when I said independent, because I think it is an important concept to understand.
No estaba tratando de ofender a nadie cuando dije independiente, porque me parece que es un concepto importante que entendamos.
I'll give an example.
Les voy a dar un ejemplo.
This movement, right from its inception,
Este movimiento desde su
when we
concepción,
went to Daniel chapter 12,
cuando fuimos a Daniel 12,
we defined the wise as what?
definimos
As teachers.
los
Someone has said as teachers.
definimos a los sabios como maestros.
And following that idea about teachers, all of us are wise.
Y siguiendo eso, todos somos sabios.
We developed another model
Y desarrollamos otro modelo
that says we're all priests.
de que todos somos sacerdotes.
And what's the primary role of a priest?
¿Y cuál es el rol principal de un sacerdote?
It's not someone who does sacrifices, it's a teacher, someone has just said.
no es alguien que hace sacrificios, es un maestro, como
So
dijimos.
based upon that model,
Entonces, basados en este modelo,
we have had a culture
hemos tenido una cultura
which has not worked well
que no ha funcionado bien.
because I'm just going to say all of you, generally, not just here, but on video,
Voy a generalizar y voy a decir, todos ustedes
want to work.
quieren trabajar.
And what word am I going to use now?
¿Y qué palabra voy a usar ahora?
Independently.
De forma independiente.
You don't want to do as you're told.
No querés hacer lo que te dicen que hagas.
Because you see it that some leader somewhere is randomly bossing you around and telling you what to do.
Porque crees que algún líder por ahí está dándote órdenes y diciéndote qué es lo que tienes que hacer.
And so the subject is about teaching.
Entonces, el tema es en relación a enseñar.
And people will come up with all manner, I'm going to call them excuses,
Entonces, las personas van a aparecer con todo tipo de excusas.
I'm shy, I don't understand things.
Yo
You
soy
can fill in
tímido,
whatever you want.
no entiendo bien las cosas, puedes rellenar con lo que quieras.
But those leaders never set the rules.
Pero esos líderes nunca pusieron las reglas, nunca hicieron las reglas.
This is not a human being pushing people around.
No se trata de un ser humano empujando a las personas, al
It's
resto
a
de las personas
theology, an
alrededor.
ideology based upon a Bible passage or
Es
a Bible
una
concept.
ideología basada en un concepto bíblico.
And when you qualify as a priest, literally in the house of Aaron,
Y cuando calificás como un sacerdote literal en la casa de Aarón,
when it's your roster, in the time of Christ, the priesthood was rostered on a, we'll say on a monthly basis.
y si eras un sacerdote en el tiempo de Cristo,
You don't tell people, I'm not available.
y era el mes que te tocaba, no le decías a las personas, yo no
Because you
estoy
get kicked
disponible,
out, you lose your job.
porque perderías tu trabajo, te echarían.
But this movement is full of independent workers
Pero este movimiento está formado por trabajadores
who think they
independientes
have a right to be independent because they think it's of leadership, but it's really of God and their job function. This is not a telling off session about teaching. It's a parable.
Estamos haciendo una parábola, no estamos retando a nadie por enseñar.
When we're required to teach, every single one of us, it's not some kind of organizational issue.
Cuando nosotros somos requeridos de enseñar, no se trata de algo organizacional, de un asunto organizacional.
It's a prophetic matter.
Es un asunto profético.
And so when I said people are doing an independent missionary work,
Entonces, cuando yo digo que las personas están haciendo una obra misionera independiente,
all of you have got your lives, you've got your personalities,
todos ustedes tienen sus vidas, su personalidad,
and you've got legitimate reasons not to teach when you're asked to.
y tenés razones legítimas para no enseñar cuando se te pide que lo hagas.
And whilst we're all free to teach when we want,
Y
if we want,
aunque somos todos libres de enseñar
when we
cuando
want,
queramos,
if we want,
cuando queramos y si queremos,
we're all free to teach if we want, when we want.
todos somos libres de enseñar cuando queramos y si queramos.
In the same way, we're free to evangelize if we want, when we
De la
want.
misma manera que somos libres de evangelizar cuando queramos y si queremos.
Back in 2014,
Allá por 2014,
9 years ago,
hace 9 años,
we received a message.
recibimos un mensaje.
Courtney, what was that message?
¿Cuál era ese mensaje, Courtney?
I asked Courtney because I knew he wouldn't know.
Le pregunté a Courtney porque sabía que no iba a saber.
Emma brought this subject up a minute ago. What was the issue? Or
Evangelism.
no public evangelism.
El mensaje era no evangelismo público.
Said something. Yeah, Courtney wouldn't have known that,
Courtney no hubiese sabido
which is
eso.
why I asked him.
Por eso le pregunté a él.
But he should have known it's related to his statement earlier, so he could have figured it out.
Pero sí pude darse cuenta que estaba relacionado con su declaración anterior.
9 years ago, when the message came, no public evangelism,
Hace 9 años atrás, cuando llegó el mensaje de no evangelismo público,
Catherine, have a guess what priests in the movement, what their reaction to that message was. What did they say? What did they think?
¿cuál fue la reacción que tuvieron las personas del movimiento? ¿Qué dijeron? ¿Qué pensaron?
It's against the thus saith the Lord.
What is against the thus saith the Lord?
No evangelizing.
No, more specifically. Brian,
Go out and
who?
the Levites and the
Not to whom?
the world.
Individual priests,
Los sacerdotes
you
individuales,
can translate now, independent priests
los sacerdotes independientes,
were not allowed to talk to anybody.
no se les permitía hablar con nadie.
People thought no public evangelism meant you're not allowed to speak to your parents or your uncle or your church friend.
Las personas creyeron que no evangelismo público significaba que no podían hablar ni con sus padres, ni con sus tíos, ni con sus amigos.
Some people here smiled when I said that.
Algunas personas acá sonrieron
But it
cuando yo
took
dije eso,
several years to become balanced.
porque tomó varios años para que esto se equilibre.
So that message was there would be no organized work.
Ese mensaje era respecto a que no habría una obra organizada.
It was never an instruction that individual members could do whatever they wanted to do, say whatever they wanted to say.
Nunca fue instruido que los miembros podían hacer lo que quisieran y decir lo que quisieran.
So earlier, Emma made a comment
Emma hoy más temprano hizo un comentario
that these differing views, these contradictory views about what will happen in the Sunday law,
que estas visiones contradictorias respecto a lo que va a pasar en la ley dominical,
when it comes to doing a personal work, which I called an independent work,
cuando
is
se trata,
nothing new. It's not a
cuando se trata-
Sunday law dispensational issue.
cuando se trata de hacer una obra individual, no es nada nuevo, es un asunto dispensacional.
It's something that we've been doing for the past 9 years, speaking to friends, family, individuals.
Es lo que hemos estado haciendo durante los últimos 9 años, es hablar con familiares, amigos, individuos.
Even people who aren't Adventist, we're allowed to speak to.
Incluso las personas que no eran adventistas, a ellas les podíamos hablar.
So I don't know if that's just a reminder to many of us, it's a reminder. Maybe
Para
for some
muchos de
people
nosotros
it's
es
new.
un recordatorio y tal vez para algunos es algo nuevo.
But that's why I've said that this idea of doing a personal work in the Sunday law history does not qualify as a prophetic phenomena.
Por esto es que dije que hacer una obra individual en torno a la ley dominical no califica como un fenómeno profético.
It's not meant to put a stop to people doing work.
Y,
for
y-
others.
y no quiero, y no significa que estamos frenando lo que alguien pueda estar
Everybody okay?
haciendo.
Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to go back to two models.
Entonces voy a volver a dos modelos.
Either we don't go to the world
O no vamos al mundo
and somehow or another they will catch the message,
y de alguna forma u otra ellos van a recibir el mensaje.
or we do go to the world.
O sí vamos al mundo.
Now, I guess since September last year,
Creo que en septiembre del año pasado
I've been speaking about the priests, Levites, and Nethinims,
yo estaba hablando de los sacerdotes, los levitas y los netineos.
and I focused on the Levites, but not really spoken about the Nethinims.
Y me enfoqué en los levitas. En realidad no hablé de los netineos.
So, based upon three people,
Entonces, basado en tres personas,
Curtis, Brian, and Catherine.
Curtis, Brian y Catherine.
When I say Catherine, I mean what she taught in her second presentation
Y cuando
yesterday.
digo Catherine me refiero a lo que ella enseñó en su segunda presentación ayer.
What you don't know on Zoom, but you can guess,
Los que están en Zoom no saben, pero pueden
is that her
adivinar,
hour Zoom presentation
es que su presentación de Zoom
was followed, I think, I'm going to say an hour and a half further discussion.
a su presentación de Zoom le siguió una discusión de 1 hora y media.
And it's in the further discussion that she clarified and refined her points.
Y fue en esa discusión que ella clarificó y redefinió su punto.
So you all missed that.
Así que ustedes todos se lo perdieron.
And without knowing what was discussed then,
Y sin saber lo que fue discutido,
you won't perhaps be able to answer the question that I'm going to pose now.
tal vez no vas a poder responder la pregunta que yo voy a hacer ahora.
But the people in our little group here will.
Pero las personas de nuestro pequeño grupo acá sí van a poder.
So the question is,
Entonces la pregunta es,
we've got Curtis's model and Brian's model,
tenemos el modelo de Curtis y de Brian,
and Catherine said something in her presentation.
y Catherine dijo algo en su presentación.
My question is, what is the problem with Curtis's model?
Mi pregunta es, ¿cuál es el problema con el modelo de Curtis?
Because it's a big problem.
Porque es un problema grande.
And you must understand what that issue, what his problem, not his problem, what the problem with his model is.
Y ustedes tienen que saber cuál es el problema con ese modelo.
Even though he might say, well, he got it from me.
Incluso, aunque él pueda decir que obtuvo su
Because
modelo
he
de mí,
made it sound something like something really good.
porque él lo hizo sonar como algo realmente bueno.
Especially when you start talking about spiritual things.
Especialmente cuando empezamos a hablar de cosas espirituales.
And we might say of Brian's model,
Y nosotros podríamos decir del modelo de Brian,
forget Paul,
olvídense de Pablo,
one man did not turn the world upside down, even though it says that. He really didn't.
un solo hombre no dio vuelta a todo el mundo, aunque dice eso, en realidad no lo hizo.
And Brian suggesting 500 of us are going to flip 7 billion people.
Y Brian sugirió que 500 de nosotros vamos a revolucionar a 7.000 millones de personas.
What we understand what flip means. They have to make a decision.
Es decir, les vamos a hacer tomar una decisión.
Aided and abetted by myself, with my help,
Con mi ayuda,
many people in the movement don't believe that can happen now.
o gracias a lo que yo dije, ahora muchas personas del movimiento no creen que algo así pueda suceder.
Because I've sent a chill, I've discouraged people from that crazy idea.
Porque yo desanimé a las personas de esa idea loca.
except Brian. And I'm not trying to say it in a joking way. I'm saying he represents a group of people in the movement who don't believe what Curtis has said, and Curtis kind of got that from me.
Entonces, no lo digo en forma de chiste, sino que Brian representa a personas del movimiento que no están de acuerdo con lo que dijo Curtis, y lo que dijo Curtis en cierta forma lo obtuvo de mí.
I want to answer someone else's question,
Entonces quiero responder la pregunta de alguien más,
which is related to this, but completely different.
que está relacionado a esto, pero de una forma totalmente diferente.
And it's going to give you a bit more time to answer my question about what is the problem with Curtis's model.
Les va a dar un poquito más de tiempo con responder la pregunta sobre cuál es el problema con el modelo de Curtis.
Do you know what the answer to my question is, Catherine?
¿Sabes cuál es la respuesta a mi pregunta, Catherine?
Yes. Okay, so Catherine thinks that she's got it, what the issue is.
Catherine cree que tiene la respuesta. ¿Cuál es el asunto?
Independent question.
El problema. Entonces, una pregunta independiente.
My question is, what will happen to the Nethinims
Mi pregunta es, ¿qué le va a suceder a los netineos
that they will not be translated alive at the second advent?
que no van a ser trasladados vivos en la segunda venida?
It's a bigger question. It's about Levites and Nethinims.
Es una pregunta más grande sobre levitas y netineos.
It's about the 144,000,
Es respecto de los 144.000.
and it's about translation
Y es sobre
for those Nethinims.
traslación.
Okay, Catherine, what's the problem with Curtis's model?
Entonces, Catherine, ¿cuál es el problema con el modelo de Curtis?
Because he made it sound really good.
Porque él lo hizo sonar como muy
He
bueno.
said,
Él dijo,
don't worry,
no nos preocupemos.
we can't do the job,
Nosotros no podemos hacerlo ahora,
but God will.
pero Dios lo va a hacer.
Fair enough. Or you don't. We don't do the job, but it's going to be. They're going to have spiritual evangelism. You say. You said that.
I said that, but I think it misses out because what I suspect the danger is that those other two components that were in the presentation.
Oh, don't give it the answer away. Go ahead, Catherine.
The Nethinims, what the Nethinims need is a message about prophecy and reforms.
What the Nephilim need, what the
Lo
Nephilims need,
Lo que los netineos
are
necesitan
a message. You said.
es un mensaje
Go ahead. On reforms and prophecy. They need a message on reforms and
un
prophecy.
mensaje sobre reforma y profecía.
If we are not the one teaching them that, there is no one else.
We are the only people that are able to give them
Y nosotros
those two
somos
components.
las únicas personas que les podemos dar esos elementos a ellos.
And our job function is teachers.
And because our job function is teachers,
Y debido a
we're
nuestra
supposed to,
función
we would be the
como
ones that do
maestros,
that teaching.
se supone que nosotros somos quienes vamos a hacer esa enseñanza.
So I was unfair to Curtis because Curtis already figured that out.
Yo no fui justo con
Sometime
Curtis
through
porque
this
él,
discussion.
en algún momento de la discusión ya se había dado cuenta de eso.
But I used his point
Pero
to
yo
make,
usé su punto
to bring something to the surface.
para traer algo a la superficie.
I don't know if I've said this privately or publicly.
No sé si esto lo dije de manera privada o pública.
Let me ask a question. Is God able to, I'm
Déjenme
going to
preguntar.
use the term that Curtis used, is God able to do spiritual evangelism?
¿Es Dios capaz de hacer evangelismo espiritual?
So Curtis said yes before you said God's. He said, yeah, he's backing out now. And
Curtis
no,
dijo que sí en algún momento.
dreams and visions?
Yeah, what do you mean by God?
I didn't define what you said, external sources. But those external sources are doing a prophetic message from God.
As do we. So we used God as the thing, but we're just proxies.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he was, I'll do the translation in a minute. He wasn't talking about dreams and visions. He's using proxies like we are. So the definition of spiritual evangelism
Entonces la definición de evangelismo espiritual
was confined that the movement won't be doing this work, but other human beings will.
decía que, o sea, implica que nosotros como movimiento no lo vamos a hacer, pero que sí otros seres humanos lo van a hacer.
We don't literally do this work, but it's
Nosotros no lo
done
hacemos literalmente,
to the world through literal agents, but it's a spiritual evangelism.
sino que es hecho a través de otros agentes, a través de un evangelismo espiritual.
Okay, so now that we're all on the same page,
Entonces, ahora que estamos todos en la misma página,
we understand what the problem is.
nosotros entendemos cuál es el problema.
Let's summarize. What is the problem with
¿Cuál
the
es el
model
problema?
that Curtis has presented to us?
Con el modelo que nos presentó Curtis.
Let me break the question down. When you're doing evangelism,
Cuando estás haciendo evangelismo,
what are you offering somebody?
¿qué es lo que le estás ofreciendo a alguien?
Salvation.
Salvación.
So I wanted to use another phrase besides salvation,
Entonces quiero usar otra frase en vez de salvación, además de salvación,
which is the tool to get to salvation.
que es la herramienta para poder llegar, acceder a la salvación.
When you evangelize,
Cuando evangelizás,
you don't know if they're going to accept or reject.
no sabes si van a aceptar o rechazar.
So you have to force them
Entonces tenés que forzarlos
to make a decision.
a tomar una decisión.
And what do we call that? What we're doing? We're
¿Y
giving them
cómo llamamos eso que hacemos?
the everlasting gospel.
El evangelio eterno.
So without the gospel, can a person be saved?
Entonces, sin el evangelio, ¿puede una persona ser salva?
And when you're doing evangelism,
Y cuando estás haciendo evangelismo,
if I say, oh, come around for a meal,
si yo les digo, pasen a
the
comer,
weather's good,
el clima está bueno,
some introductory thoughts, is that evangelism?
algún pensamiento introductorio, ¿es eso evangelismo?
No, there might be tools to break down
No, pueden ser herramientas
barriers,
para derrumbar barreras.
what's the entering wedge for evangelism that we all know?
¿Cuál es la cuña por la que
That's
entramos,
right, I have to
por
do
la
it.
que
Let me
entra
translate. That's
el
right.
el
Health.
evangelismo?
Yeah, so the health message is the entering wedge.
Entonces, el mensaje de salud supuestamente es la cuña por donde entra el
But it's
evangelismo.
not the gospel,
Pero
and
no
it's
es el
only
evangelio,
an introductory part of
es solamente
evangelism.
como una parte introductoria del evangelismo.
And if evangelism remained with the health reform message, would it be of any use?
Y sin el evangelismo, el mensaje de salud, ¿serviría para algo?
because the end goal is salvation, we've said.
Porque el fin de esto es la salvación.
So the answer is no, it would not be of any
Entonces
use.
la respuesta es no, no serviría de nada.
So what has been said,
Entonces lo que ha sido dicho,
if we, this movement, don't give
si nosotros como
the
movimiento
message
no
to the
damos el
world, to the
mensaje al mundo,
Nephilims,
a los netineos,
will they understand? I'm going to
Por-
call it the reform message,
¿podrán ellos entender el mensaje de la reforma,
which is equality.
que es igualdad?
Will they understand that from the world?
¿Van a entender ellos del mundo?
I'm going to say yes. We've got a couple of different answers, but yes, they can. They get that from the
Entonces
world.
voy a decir sí, o sea, ellos pueden obtener eso del mundo,
But it's not sufficient
pero no es suficiente
for salvation.
para salvación.
So if it's not sufficient for salvation,
Entonces, si no es suficiente para la salvación,
is there actually a term, a concept as spiritual evangelism?
¿existe realmente este término de evangelismo espiritual?
Brian said we have to do this work.
Brian dijo, nosotros tenemos que hacer esta obra.
No, Brian said we will do this work.
No, Brian dijo, nosotros vamos a hacer esta obra.
It was Catherine that says we're the only ones that can do this work.
Catherine fue la que dijo que nosotros somos los únicos que podemos hacer esta obra.
And Curtis was saying the world will do it
Y Curtis estaba diciendo, el mundo va a hacer esta obra.
equally well.
Igual de bien.
But obviously they can't.
Pero obviamente ellos no pueden.
So unless we do that work,
Entonces, a menos que nosotros hagamos esa obra,
what's the result for the Nephilims, Magda?
¿cuál es el resultado para los netineos?
If we don't do the work, what's the result for the
Si
Nephilims?
nosotros no hacemos la obra, ¿cuál es el resultado para los netineos?
So that means everyone in the world dies.
Entonces, eso significa que todos en el mundo mueren.
So you said a minute ago she says they can't be saved, and then she shrugged her shoulders when I gave the same question more pointedly.
Entonces, hace unos momentos ella dijo que ellos no pueden ser salvados y ahora le da cosa cuando yo pregunto lo mismo de una forma más
The
directa.
reason I pointed that out is because we all do that,
Y la razón por la que señalo esto es porque todos hacemos esto.
and it's good that we do that.
Y está bueno que hagamos eso.
When someone presses us, we should pause and be careful about what we're about to say.
Cuando alguien nos
So it's
presiona,
good that's what he did.
deberíamos pausar y ser cuidadosos con lo que vamos a decir. Así que lo que ella hizo es algo bueno.
Go ahead, Magda. If we don't do a job, what happens to the Nephilims?
Si nosotros no hacemos la obra, ¿qué pasa con los netineos?
God usually pays someone who does do the job.
God will find someone to do their job. That's what Curtis said.
Dios va a encontrar a
And
alguien que haga la obra. Eso es lo que
Catherine-
dijo Curtis.
And Catherine said, there is nobody.
Y Catherine dijo, no hay nadie.
But there's line of success, so we should do the job.
So it's a what?
Line of success. Success. So we we should do the job. I don't know.
My question was, if we don't do it,
Mi
what
pregunta era,
happens?
si nosotros no lo hacemos, ¿qué sucede?
Around the world.
They will all be lost.
Todos ellos van a estar perdidos.
I think colloquially we say they all die.
Coloquialmente decimos que van a morir.
So this question about translation and the 144,000, it's answered.
Entonces esta pregunta sobre la traslación y los 144.000 está respondida.
If we don't do this job,
Si no hacemos esta obra,
everybody dies.
Todos mueren.
And if we're talking about the Nephilims, we can just extend that to the Levites as well.
Y si hablamos de los netineos, podemos extender esto hacia los levitas también.
In closing,
Cerrando,
either we go to the world
o vamos al mundo,
not personally, not independently,
No
not
de forma-
individually,
personal, independiente e individual,
but we have a movement initiative,
sino que tenemos una iniciativa del
which
movimiento,
means someone has to give the green light that we can now do public evangelism whenever the now is.
que significa que alguien va a dar la luz verde que indique que podemos hacer evangelismo público,
We'll say Sunday law,
lo vamos a decir en la ley dominical,
unless that switch or that button is pressed,
y a menos que ese botón sea realmente apretado,
everyone dies. There's no hope for them.
todos mueren, no hay esperanza para ellos.
And them is the Nethinims,
Ellos serían los netineos,
and everyone
y todos
is not 7 billion people,
no son los 7.000 millones de personas,
because I'm not talking about the
porque no
personal
estoy
work that you
hablando
do.
de la obra personal que cada uno hace.
And I think many of us, I'm not saying I'm correct necessarily, but I don't think many of us have still conceptualized what that means or how it works.
No digo que yo esté en lo correcto, pero creo que muchos todavía no han conceptualizado cómo esto funciona.
But it's nothing new.
Pero no es nada nuevo.
This tension has existed for 9 years in our movement.
Esta tensión ha existido durante 9 años en nuestro
And if you can get it
movimiento.
straight in your mind, you'll understand about the Sunday law, personal work or movement work.
Y en relación a la ley dominical, tenés que entender esto de la obra del movimiento y la obra personal.
Personal or movement.
Del movimiento o personal.
Okay, we'll close this prayer now and we'll continue our discussion.
Vamos a cerrar una
later
oración
today.
ahora y después vamos a continuar con esta discusión.
Let's pray.
Oremos.
Holy God, we thank you.
Santo Dios, te damos gracias.
It's only as we wrestle one with another,
Es solamente cuando luchamos uno
like
contra
Jacob,
otro,
we wrestle with you,
como cuando Jacob luchó contigo,
who really was wrestling with himself.
que en realidad estaba luchando consigo mismo.
It's only in this struggle,
Y es solo en esta lucha,
the struggle that you have given to us,
que lo que nos has dado a nosotros,
that we can become the people of prophecy.
que podamos convertirnos en el pueblo de la profecía.
May each of us come to a clearer understanding of the truth,
Que cada uno de nosotros pueda llegar a un entendimiento más claro de la verdad,
as we see time running away from us.
mientras vemos que se nos escapa el tiempo.
In Jesus' name, amen.
En el nombre de Jesús. Amén.
I just wanted to say
Solo quería decir
our next study was meant to be in 3 minutes,
que nuestro próximo estudio supuestamente iba a ser dentro de 3 minutos.
and everybody needs a little bit of a break. If we could
Y todos
meet
necesitamos un break.
in 17 minutes at UK time, that would be 10:45 as
Así
opposed
que
to
tal vez
10:30. So
podemos
it's just 15 minutes later.
esperarnos, podemos reunirnos de vuelta en 15 minutos.